Hello and welcome to the Biz Dev Podcast, the podcast about developing your business. I'm your host today, Gary Voigt. David's not here, and that's probably going to be a good thing because no one likes him anyway. So we're here to discuss topics ranging from tech news, software development, small business startups, leadership, strategies for growth, and how they're all kind of related. We'll try to keep you entertained as we go. And to help me today, please welcome our guest, Jordan Wilson. Hey, Jordan, thanks for joining us.
Gary, thank you for having me on. I'm very excited to talk all things tech, software, AI, wherever it goes. I'm excited.
Yeah, and Jordan, you actually have your own podcast about AI, so I think we're going to nerd out about that a little bit. And you're also the founder and CEO of Accelerant Agency. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But like I said, to get started here, let's talk about AI. Typically, we have a couple of intro topics that we bring up for guests. Lately, everybody's just talking about AI. That's the only thing people want to talk about. So with the recent changes that have come up, I wouldn't say changes, but the recent events that have occurred with, people testifying before Congress about there should be some guardrails and regulations. And then you see about 15 to 20 new AI apps or plugins or add-ons like every day. And so I just wanted to get your take on, first, if you use it, how you use it, and where do you think it's going and what might scare you?
Great question. All right, I'll try not to talk for 3 hours straight here. Okay, do I use it? Yes, I use it every hour of my working day. Kind of because I do have a daily podcast on AI, I need to stay up with it.
Yeah, makes sense.
I've been trying to actually, and I'm 80% of the way there. I've been trying to replace normal Google searching, with ChatGPT. Obviously with browsing and plugins enabled on that, Google Bard, Microsoft, Bing Chat. So I've been trying to replace normal Googling with kind of this new AI search wave, I guess. So am I using it? Absolutely, all day, every day. Where is it going? There might have been a question in between, but I'll jump to where it's.
Yeah, I was asking, you use it, how you use it. You've explained that. Where do you think it's going? And if it scares you in any way.
There we go. Okay. Where is it going? Gosh, who knows? Gary, what you talked about, the so many tools every day. I always look on Product Hunt, which is a place where a lot of, new AI software debuts. And there's literally hundreds of new AI software that are released every day. I don't look at them all, but I look at the more popular ones. So where it's going, development's going fast, very fast. And it's going to the point, which, we can talk about later, where I do think the same way that we all use the computer and the internet right now if you have a desk job, AI, that's where we're going to be with AI in a matter of months, I believe, especially with, kind of what Microsoft announced recently with their Copilot and integrating AI into an actual operating system.
Yeah, it seems like it's just going to be intertwined into our everyday computing really soon. What we thought might be like, 5-10 years now, it looks like 5-10 months, maybe. But I wanted to bring up something. My role here at Big Pixel, the company that has this podcast, our podcast, is a creative director. And so I've been a designer for many years. And just yesterday, I think it was yesterday. We'll just say it's yesterday because no one's really going to check the dates on this. Photoshop announced their AI component in a beta that generates images and removes things from images. And I have to say, anybody who's used Photoshop or has been a designer in the past, every time that we made a selection around an object to remove it or tried to use like the stamp and clone tool to try to get rid of something or replace something or composite two images together, it was always in the back of our head, like, can you imagine one day you could just like select this and then like type in what you want there and boom, it would show up? That'd be crazy. Yeah, that happened yesterday. So when AI comes and hits home in a way that you're like, that's never going to happen, and then it happens, you can't deny it. It's just insane.
Yeah, those and the fact, Gary, you can do it with text as well, right? Like text to replace. Like I think early on, speaking from a designer standpoint, I kind of used to do that in a previous life, but when Content Aware came out in Photoshop, where you
Oh
could,
yeah, game
use your
changer.
mouse and spend a lot of time, and I think you hit like Shift Delete, and it would delete an object and replace it. This was, in theory, Adobe was, really early with that, and that seemed like at the time, which I don't know how long ago this was,
That
maybe
was
8 years
actually
ago.
their AI too. They built something called
Yes.
Sensei, which was their machine learning thing. But
Hmm.
yeah, now it's just exploded.
Now
Plus
it's just
they,
text.
huh?
Now it's just text. It's text to Photoshop, text to this new technology. You don't even have to spend the time clicking it or outlining it. It's just talking to Photoshop with text prompts.
Yeah, I mean there is some clicking, but not
Mm.
anything near.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to know how to use the pen tool as an expert to make distinct selections around weird odd shapes. You don't have to try to guess what's in the background behind the subject that you remove. I watched it actually. People took cars out of the parking lot of a restaurant that was near the water, and it replaced the cars with the road, the sidewalk, the light poles that are supposed to be there, and the water. And all the lighting matched, all the compositing looked like it was just, it looked like it was fake, like a fake presentation of, you know, we really had the original photo and put the cars in there and just took the cars out to make you, think that we did it. But no, it was almost too much. And it's
Yeah.
still in
Yeah.
beta.
I agree.
So it's going to get crazy. It's also going to get a little scary because you got to also
Yeah.
imagine the way that fake photos, fake videos, fake voices, fake text can be damaging. So,
Yeah, that's a huge point, because I think Photoshop, it's one of those things like Google. It just became a verb for when bad actors would do something, or someone would get caught and they're like, oh no, that's photoshopped, right?
yeah,
But it used to take, in order for someone to do that, it used to take a highly skilled designer, sometimes many hours to make something look passable. But now anyone that has an internet connection and can watch a 10-minute tutorial can go in and do it. So
yeah.
yeah, what that means for the future, a lot of misinformation and disinformation.
So you mentioned your podcast where you talk about AI. It's called Everyday AI. And when did you get that started?
Yeah, recently actually, we
Oh,
just
okay.
just hit yeah just hit 30 days, I think. But yeah, we've been doing an episode every day, a live stream, so people can ask questions from different experts in different fields, a newsletter, the whole thing. I kind of, just to quickly get into the story, even before I started Accelerant Agency, so it's only been around for 4 years, but I wrote a business plan in 2018 that said advancements in technology. I didn't know it was going to be AI, but I said it's going to make traditional marketing deliverables obsolete. So I always knew when I started Accelerant Agency, it was just going to be a jumping point
Okay.
to pivot to something in technology. And this is kind of the manifestation of that, this everyday AI kind of media group, or whatever you want to call it. But it's because it's hard. It's so hard, unless you're spending many, many hours a week to keep up with not just how to use all this technology, but to understand how it impacts our lives. Because I kind of made the reference earlier, like, hey, if you're at a desk job, the same way that you use a computer and internet, that process, in a lot of sectors and parts of the US, at least if we're just talking about the United States, took decades, right? It took, like, I remember working in a newspaper, like when the internet, first became like quote unquote popular, like there
Yeah.
was pushback. Why would we put anything on the internet? Like it's slow, it takes forever, right? So, when you think of how the workplace in general changed, because of the internet, because of computers and technology, it was a long drawn out process. It's not happening with AI. It's instant. Things are changing. Companies are cutting thousands of jobs instantly because of AI. So I don't think we all have time, like that was afforded to us in ramping up to speed with the internet, or ramping up to speed with smartphones or social media. We were afforded many years to understand what it meant. I don't think that's how it's happening with AI, which is one of the catalysts for actually starting
Yeah.
kind of the everyday AI.
You brought up newspapers. I used to work at a newspaper publisher as well. And you were right when you say the internet kind of, even though it was a little bit slower, it did pull the rug right out from underneath a lot of newspaper advertising, because it used to be the model was the newspaper is free and everybody's jobs paid for through advertising sales. And of course, the newspaper used to be the most eyeballs in your local area seeing it every day. So the engagement was huge and you could charge big rates. And then that turned into, okay, we got to put everything on the internet. What are we going to do with the ads? Well, no one's going to pay for the same amount for internet ads for, your little website. And then everybody saw newspapers giving away the content for free and not getting the ad revenue. And then now the paywalls exist because the content cannot be free because they do not get the ad revenue because they're not the biggest entity of engagement in your local area anymore. So, long story for just saying it took a while for the internet to destroy that kind of model. It's not going to take a while for AI to start, and I hate saying the word, but disrupt the industry when it comes to, I think, marketing engagement in traditional means of marketing, like you brought up, but definitely technology and the way that people use computers, just writing in general that's not creative writing, almost seems like it's not even going to be necessary anymore. You just have to give a couple of prompts and like, hey, give me 15 paragraphs about this subject. And then, yeah, you might have to do some editing, but man, that's going to be minutes instead of hours.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, and it's relevant with that, Gary, because yeah, if you look at not just the newspaper and how it, for the most part, most newspapers failed to adapt to what you were talking about, the advertising
Yeah, they
strategy,
weren't
and
quick enough
putting
for
out,
sure.
yeah, putting out news and advertisement online, moving at a Jurassic pace. But even if you look at what's happening with the journalism or the news media landscape, I mean, look at what happened with BuzzFeed, laid off
Yeah.
its editorial staff, and what happened. The AI generated content that they put on their site to replace humans performed 40% better. Right? So what
You're
happens
saying
now?
exactly what I was trying to say. That's an excellent point. Yeah.
Yeah. What happens when AI is better at us than doing some of our jobs? It's like, even as a former journalist, I used to think I was pretty good, won an award or two. And then, when GPT first came out and was publicly available in 2020, through tools like Copy AI, Jasper, some of those things. And I sat down and used it, and I'm like, I'm not good at writing anymore. Right. And I think it's hard. And I think that's why AI gets a bad rap for some reason, because people are threatened by it. And to say, oh, I'm an analyst, and GPT can't analyze better than me. Yes, it can. Like, if you prompt it correctly and make sure it has access to the correct information, it absolutely can. So, yeah, I think AI has become a villain for whatever reason, versus people just accepting that this is going to be a large part of our future and learning to work with it.
Yeah. Learning to work with it is definitely, there's going to be jobs that are new and created based on your experience with AI, how good you are with, writing prompts and getting the information you need quickly, and then double checking for accuracy and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, at first, like I used Jasper and Copy AI before, and it was not that great. But of
Mhm.
course, it's getting better now. And people will still say that, yeah, you can get all this, copy written through AI. You can generate images through AI with Mid Journey and everything, but it still lacks a little bit of soul. Yeah, for now, it does. For now. But it's getting better and better and better. To while you can still recognize a lot of stuff, like side note, we're currently hiring and we're getting a lot of resumes and cover letters sent to us literally within seconds, like 200 and something within like 5 minutes. And 80% of them look the same. And you can tell exactly which ones were just prompted from AI, just sent back. So it's noticeable in certain areas, but I think that's probably going to change too. I think people are going to be able to, become prompt wizards and make everything seem a little bit more human, even though it's not.
Yeah,
But
that's a great point, and I think that's where, at least early on, Gary, like people thought AI was falling flat because it's like, oh,
yeah,
look at this. This is nothing what a human would produce, these resumes, right? But if you know how to do it, and get a good if you give GPT or whatever program you're using the right memory and the right instructions, and say, hey, write this in a manner that is not typical of AI or
yeah,
GPT, and infuse these feelings or emotions or words, then it will. But yeah, the majority of people just expect to put something spend 10 seconds and to get a resume out. And yeah, like what you said, when you do that, it's everything looks the same.
yeah. But anyways, that's enough for AI for now. Let's talk about you and your company. You're the CEO for Accelerant Agency. Um, when did you start Accelerant Agency? You mentioned it before.
Yeah, so started officially in 2019, so
2019.
still a pretty young company.
And give me the 30,000 foot view of what you guys do.
Sure. Working with small, medium sized businesses to help them better understand their digital strategy. And a lot of times, there's two parts of that. So it's front end strategy and consulting. And then on the back end, at times actually working with them on those deliverables. So anything from content creation, running ads on digital platforms, SEO, conversion rate optimization, email marketing, anything that happens that a business can use to grow online. We also handle back-end deliverables as well.
So there are a lot of marketing companies that exist, and a lot of them are quote unquote digital marketing strategists.
Mm-hmm.
We went through a phase where we kind of had an outside marketing consultant, and then we took on marketing ourselves, and then we looked through other agencies, and eventually we did end up just hiring a marketing professional who's Christy, by the way, and she's awesome. Um, so we've been through the journey a small business would typically go through when trying to find someone to help them with their marketing. And we're in a unique position since we create custom software, and most of our clients are either large companies that need help. They might have a dev team, but they just need a little bit more help, or startups who don't really exist yet. So our efforts in trying to market to those two targets was a strategy. We had to figure it out, but we were told by many marketing agencies that they would guarantee us lead generation. Um, all we got to do is tell them our ideal customer, and then we'll have 200 leads in a month. Now, as a professional in marketing and working for small businesses, do you find that model to be a little outdated? And do you go the step further to try to craft strategies specific to the company and their reach? Or do you kind of just, what are your feelings on how some marketing agencies will just give you the blanket, from A to Z, these are the steps that everybody's
Mm-hmm.
doing. So that's what you have to do as well.
Sure. Yeah, marketing agencies, rightfully so, have a bad name. I often try to, when I'm talking about Accelerant, not even talk about marketing. And if we can, I try to even avoid doing marketing deliverables on the back end, and instead work with clients to help them fulfill those in-house and to teach their teams, just because I think the technology, it's a lot easier now than it was, 10 years ago to do websites or to run ad campaigns. But to get to your point, Gary, about, hey, every marketing company will say, hey, we'll give you this many leads, and they will and they can, because a lot of advancements now, if you're running ads on Google, or doing campaigns in Facebook, they make it easy enough to get a lot of low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
But many times that low hanging fruit is already spoiled, and the fruit is not very good. So we've always taken a different approach. We get referrals all the time from clients, and we just say no. We spend a lot of time before taking on clients, and we will spend many times. And I'm not exaggerating this, but hundreds of hours before we actually get started on a project. We will look at every single piece of data available, which there's a lot of data available. So if you're a small business, we look at all your competitors. We look at every single Google ad they've ever run. We look at every single Facebook ad they've ever run. We look at where they're getting backlinks from. We look at their offline marketing tactics. And then we will go back to our client and say, hey, if you want to compete in this space, it's going to take 18 months. You can start to compete here in 3 months, and then we'll start planting the seeds for the other one. So I think so much of marketing, there's two ways to do it. You can do the smoke and mirrors and give people that low hanging fruit, or you can go take a super analytical, long-term, slow and steady approach and do things the right way. I always liken it to weight loss, right? Or getting in shape, right? So
That's if
you're yeah, if you're a little overweight, you can do a smoke and mirrors, low hanging fruit approach. You can go on a crash, 7-day diet and wear a sauna suit and, drop 40 pounds, but you're going to gain 38 of it back immediately. Or you can get a plan. You can look at what's the best way for you to lose weight. Why do you want to lose weight? Hey, are you training for something in the end that the reason why you're losing weight? So it's our approach has always been a much more analytical, data-driven approach, saying no to clients because sometimes we'll say, hey, we can't help you grow. You're already kind of, 1A or 1B in your area. So if you're expecting to double, revenue, there's not an appetite for that. We look at search volume. We look at so many different data points that, most marketing companies don't do that because it's easier instead to just sell low hanging fruit, and hopefully you keep clients long.
I like that approach a lot better. That does seem like it seems like you're actually putting in the effort to figure out how to not just maybe grow their brand recognition, but put them in a position to keep growing and growing, whether it's going to be slow or fast is really, I mean, it's not very controllable, but it's somewhat controllable, I guess. But it's definitely not like you said with the fad diet analogy. You can't throw everything at them all at once and then expect to get great results. But so
and
you are a small business yourself, and you're helping other small businesses. How many people on your team, if you don't mind me asking?
So we have 3 here in the Chicago area. And then we, usually work with a handful of contractors at any given time, just depending on what the project is.
Are you guys remote, or do you guys all work at, you said you're all in Chicago. So do you work out of an office, or are you all kind of remote?
Yeah. So we're hybrid. We do, 2 or 3 days a week in the office, 2 or 3 days a week at home.
Yeah, we're a small company too. We got about 10, maybe 11 if I'm doing my math. We'll edit this out if I'm wrong. But yeah, we also work with contractors. We're 100% remote. So the one thing I knew you were a small business, I assumed you were remote, but that's why the hybrid thing kind of threw me off. But what do you find as the CEO of a small business as a beneficial way to kind of keep a good culture in the group if you are hybrid and remote? Because at our company, we love being remote. We don't buy into the whole, debate between hybrid, remote, or in office thing, productivity versus, creative discussions, blah, blah, blah. I think it's all in the way you approach the culture. And that's something that we really focus on. I want to know what you did for your small team to kind of keep that culture going, for everybody to feel like they're involved and part of a team instead of just a cog.
Yeah. So it's so important. And full disclosure, I think I suck at it. Like even talking about this right now, I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's always been my weak point. But it's trying to do small things like, walk, a half mile, go sit down and have lunch, or instead of starting the day in the office, let's start the day, across the street at a coffee shop, or, being a small budget, you never have huge, huge budgets for, being a small business, you never have huge budgets for holiday parties. But it's like, all right,
Right.
this year, a couple of us went and, did an indoor golfing thing. So it's just trying to take those opportunities when you can to do small little things that normally remote employees can't, just getting together, aside from being in the office physically, right?
Yeah.
That's always great. But it's just like, yesterday we had a meeting on the patio, at our, at our office. There's kind of like a shared patio space. So taking small steps like that, as a kind of hybrid small business, I think is important.
Yeah. For us, since we're remote, we do pretty much the same thing, but it all involves like Slack or Zoom. Like we'll have, like yesterday, in fact, we had a group lunch, a team lunch, at least once a month. Everybody gets together, orders food. It's a DoorDash to us, and we're all just on Zoom, just chatting, eating, and doing whatever. There'll be like the group of our developers have like training days where they all have time to kind of just learn something new, whatever they pick, little things like that. That while we can't be in person and encouraging everybody, we do try to create that culture where it feels like it's a team of friends in a way and not so much just employees. We like to try to consider everybody being part of the same goal. And I know that sounds cliche, but the way we do it is by being open and transparent with not just our employees or team members, but with each other for what we expect and how we think we can get there. So you're actually,
Yeah, that's super important.
I was going to say, I know you didn't really like the idea of culture or didn't have an answer for it right away. I could tell you it's something that it's still hard to do. Yeah, I think even in person it's hard to do, but it's something if you do try and you're open about it and you're just a little bit vulnerable with everybody, that human connection is really what the culture comes down to. So
Yeah, and I think it was actually easier when we were just in person, like more before the pandemic. I think, that that hybrid it's hard to find the balance of culture, and it's actually good to even talk about it out loud, because then you're like, oh yeah, I have to be intentional, because I think if you're fully remote, culture is top of mind because you're a fully remote team, and you aren't able to connect and have that in-person energy. But then if you're fully in office, maybe it's not as much of a
yeah,
concern because it naturally happens.
yeah, or you tend not to cultivate it because you feel like you just see these
Yeah.
people every day anyway. Like I've been in, a large company, and no matter how many employees there were, I talked to 3, 4, maybe. You know what I mean? You knew of everybody, but you
Mhm.
didn't really share a connection. So, yeah, I guess when it is top of mind, you do make an extra effort to be there. All right, I wanted to talk more about your business. Can you tell us what drove you to actually start a business on your own? Like, what was the passion behind saying, you know what, I'm not going to work for anybody else anymore. I have this idea. I'm going to go. I'm going to do what I can to get it started. What drove you to do that?
That's a great question. I think a lot of circumstances, but more than anything, it was opportunity and actually my wife really pushing me. So I've
Good.
always had kind of that entrepreneur's spirit, even from the time I was little. Even when I was a teenager, I was freelancing. I picked up certain skills. I started as a journalist at 17. So writing stories for the daily newspaper as a teenager. I think I started writing actual stories when I was 18, maybe. So I used those skills and I started to freelance. And even in newspapers, we kind of already talked about it, but I was always what's the best way to describe it? I was always disappointed in the newspaper industry with how slow it innovated. The fact that like I was so excited by internet and technology, and being in newspapers for full time for 5-6 years, however long it was, I was frustrated. So
Yeah.
that one of the things that led me to kind of leave that profession was I'm like, y'all are moving so slow. Like, I like to move fast, so that's not for me. So kind of the second part of my career, I worked at a nonprofit for 10 years. I was the marketing director and then the executive director. And, kind of the transition to how I started my business is, the last 5 years of the 10-year stint there, our nonprofit, very weird. We essentially became a community and activation agency for Nike and Jordan brand,
Oh,
which was
wow.
awesome. Yeah. So we got, I traveled the country, always doing these anytime, Nike or Jordan had a community-based activation. So they brought us in first as a community partner, and then we just started doing activations with them. And I was handling, creative for, Michael Jordan's community initiative. So all these things that really led me to, I was working with some of the largest marketing agencies in the country, a lot of times multiple of them at the same time, because, we'd be having simultaneous activations, week after week after week in New York, LA, Atlanta, all over the place. So I got to learn from not just really smart people in marketing and advertising at Nike, but I also got to learn from some of the smartest in the business at large, advertising and marketing companies. So kind of
Yeah.
like that combination with my wife pushing me to be like, hey, you're smart. You've always had this entrepreneur spirit. You can do it on your own. So that's kind of what led me, about now 4 years ago to start Accelerant.
Did you start just freelancing again? Or did you say, you know what, if I'm gonna do this on my own, I'm gonna do it and start an actual business that I'm gonna grow?
Yeah,
Because you had
exactly. Yeah, I had to.
experience in freelancing. But man, talk about a client you want to brag about, Nike and Jordan. Yeah. Kudos, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so cool, it's just because early on when we started, we were more the community partner. We would just get to sit in on the meetings, between Nike and the marketing agency, and we'd hear them collaborate. But then we'd also have separate meetings with just the marketing agency or separate meetings with just Nike. And to have the perspective of being like, oh, first we're in the group with A, B, and C, and then we're just with A, and then we're just with C. It was such a enlightening experience with how fast paced marketing and advertising works. It was such a great base that I was blessed to have to use that base as a foundation to start a small little company.
And when you did start, did you get most of your clients just through like referrals and word of mouth? Or I'm assuming you probably already had a little bit of a network built up from your years in that previous position. Or did you just go out there and start trying to just brand and build your brand and throw your name out wherever you can?
Yeah, the latter. The crazy thing is, you would assume that doing all these things, I would have such a large network, but I didn't, because we were literally all over the place. So it was never, overly concentrated in like one area. So it's like, I'm from Chicago, so like, yeah, we had like, the Jordan brand program was called Jordan Brand Wings. So we had a big activation for years in Chicago, but I was also working on other programs in other parts of the country. So, I unfortunately didn't build up, a super strong network. So when I did start my business, it was, I was knocking on doors. It's literally starting from zero is hard. And I essentially, even though it's like, I started when I was still wrapping up some work with the nonprofit. So it's like, you know, part of my brain was like, oh, finishing up this, this design piece that's going to be used, by Nike. And the other part of it is, trying to talk to a local business and me saying, hey, I'm going to work for free, actually. And people just don't trust marketing people for whatever reason. And I really wanted to do it on my own. So, I wasn't even saying like, hey, look at this project that I'm literally doing right now with Nike. Like, LeBron James is tweeting about it. Like, I wasn't using that. I really, maybe I was too proud, but I didn't want to lean into, what I was doing previously. I wanted people to, especially trying to position myself to work in more strategy and consulting. I wanted people to understand and value kind of my knowledge and expertise. So, I really just started from scratch, going around working for free.
Yeah, on this podcast, we do try to get down to the real part of starting a business and then the real problems and triumphs that come with it. But there is always going to be that area in between starting, being passionate and like just going all in, and then realizing, oh, wait a minute, I might not know everything. I might not have enough. What am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? Do I push on, or do I just wrap it, call it a day, and go back somewhere else? You seem to have pushed on. So I was just going to ask you, was there any hurdle or roadblock in the way that was that like defining moment where it's like, this is either I'm going to go forward or I'm going to go back, but I have to decide right now? Did you come to that journey, or did you come to that kind of like a fork in the road at any part of your journey so far?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely not alone in this, but I think so many people who started a business around the time I did, you had that moment instantly
Yeah.
because a matter of months after kind of, hey, I'm all in, I'm doing this full time. The world started to shut down because of the
Yep.
pandemic. So you got slapped in the face pretty hard pretty quickly, because at least one of the early kind of ways I was trying to separate myself from other companies is like, hey, I will come in and we will meet in person. Right? Like you're not going to be working with, an offshore team or, some company, some huge company that it's impossible to get in touch with the person in charge. I'm like, no, you want to meet tomorrow? Let's meet tomorrow. I'll come to your office. Let's sit down. Let's talk about it. Let's look at your PPC campaigns. Let's look at your strategy, whatever it may be. And that kind of, quote unquote, advantage was instantly taken. And to try
Wow.
to drum up new business, when the world, depending on where you're from, but when the world kind of shut down, that's a hurdle. Speaking of a hurdle, that's a huge one.
All right. Well, that's definitely something that you had no control over, but you seem to get through it. So leads me to another question. So far in your journey, what do you consider your big list? Yeah. What do you consider your biggest accomplishment?
I mean, making it. Right.
Yeah.
I think if you talk to anyone,
Sticking with it.
that
Yeah.
starts from, yeah, anyone that starts from actual zero, I think a lot of times when people start a company, they're working at a different company and they kind of break off with one large client, right? It's like,
That
okay,
is
this agreement's
very, very
over.
common. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a study, but I know a bunch of friends who started businesses, and a lot of them start that way. So it's like, oh, if you start with a nice client, a 6-figure client, and you already have a pre-existing relationship for them, you have a much higher likelihood of succeeding. But I forget the study, but it's an overwhelming majority of small businesses fail after the first 5 years.
Yeah.
So
The 5 year
we're
mark.
not. Yeah, so it's like we're not at the 5-year mark, but we're pretty close, and we'll make it. But that's if I'm being completely transparent, it's making it, because to start from absolutely no clients, no money, no revenue, and to go all in, to make it out on the other side, that's by far, if I'm being real, that's by far the biggest accomplishment.
Yeah. I hear you. And so if you were to give other small companies or entrepreneurs like 3 pieces of advice from just what you've learned so far about their new business startup or how to succeed, what would you tell them?
First and foremost, you have to actually talk to your customers. So, whether you haven't started yet or you're in the early phases, you have to talk to your customers. That's something I did. I set out with a goal to do 100 free consults for small business owners. I failed. I only got to 72, but I talked to 72 small business
That's still
owners.
72.
Yeah, that's a lot, right? So I had to talk to customers. So first and foremost, you have to talk, right? Like I think people start a business to put their head down and to like grow big, but like you have to stay in line with the pain points. So I'd say number one, talk to your customers. Number two is you have to be able to effectively communicate your USP, your unique selling proposition. So many companies, I think when they're first starting out, or entrepreneurs, they just follow someone else and they try to be the next Uber of this, or they try to be the next Airbnb of that, or they just try to replicate what some other company is doing. And this is something that we help companies with too, is we say, okay, well, why? Not trying to be a jerk, but why would I choose, your company over this bigger company that you're trying to do the exact same thing as? So I'd say the second thing is you actually have to be able to effectively communicate your unique value, what makes you uniquely better, especially when you're starting out, because you're probably drawing inspiration from someone else, which is normal. So you have to be able to take your personal pride out of, I'm a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur. You have to be able to separate yourself from that, which is extremely hard. And you have to be able to say, okay, why would someone choose me over the thousands of others, over this other person that's just down the road? So I'd say number 2 is you have to be able to effectively communicate that USP. And then I'd say the third thing, kind of my third piece of advice, is you have to constantly innovate, but with data. So just because you can talk to your customers and then effectively communicate your what makes you uniquely better, you have to use customer data and you have to constantly innovate. And then it's a cycle. Then you have to go back and talk to your customers and you have to say, hey, are we still being that uniquely better for you? So it's a revolving cycle, but that would be kind of my 3 different pieces of advice.
All good. And yeah, I agree with all 3 of them, especially the value proposition or your core values as a company, not just what your company plans on doing, but just the company itself. Yeah, that one's a big one for us as well. And man, you're getting close to the 5-year mark. It sounds like you're heading straight for it and you're not going backwards. So congratulations on that for sure. If anybody else wants to learn any more about you or the Accelerant agency or your podcast, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's funny. I should have, when I picked out names, I should have made names easier to spell. But so Accelerant Agency, you can go to accelerant.agency.com, or the Everyday AI, podcast, newsletter, live stream, whatever it is. So that's just your everydayai.com. So yeah, trying to just help people understand AI and grow their business.
We'll put all the links for your business, your podcast, and even your LinkedIn in the show notes. So anybody who wants to learn more could just click those below. And if you want to leave a comment or have any questions about this podcast, you can email us at hello@thebigpixel.net, or you can reach out to us on LinkedIn and any other social media platform we have. We still have TikTok, even though David doesn't like it, but who knows? Eventually it might go away. It might not. But to wrap it all up again, the conversation we had about AI, I think what we spoke about is probably the same topics most people are talking about. And I'm interested to kind of see next month if it's going to be different or how it's going to change. So I'm going to check out your podcast and see where that goes as well. So
thanks. I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's been fun. We're going to have to check in on that Everyday AI podcast and see how things are changing. But until then, for now, we're out and we will see you guys next week.